Welcome, Molly. I'm so delighted to have
Hi.
you here. We go back a while, so I've been
Yes,
looking forward to this interview for a long time. It's
yeah,
going to be wonderful. We've been working together for a couple years now, if I remember
yes,
correctly.
yes.
Let's start with your story a little bit and how you got connected to me. So you were one of my Low Insulin Academy students a while ago.
Right,
The
right.
one that did very well and has
Mhm.
kept in contact with me, with the app that I
Yep,
use, and every once in a while, I'll get an email from you with, updates, which I
updates, yeah.
love because it's so heartwarming to know that people are still
Mhm.
doing what they learned and it's
Right,
still making an impact
right,
in life rather than, I see somebody once and then I never know what happened.
yeah.
So
And
yeah.
when changes happen, you wanna share share them. That's the other thing, like, I'll find myself going, "Oh, this happened," or, "I figured this out. I feel like I wanna tell Shanna." So I sit down
I
and
love hearing
tell her
it. So
yeah.
yeah, tell our listeners a little bit about how we got connected and, your story.
Well, I have been a teacher most of my life and then also stay-at-home mom, so, and always have been able to, I'm 5'2", I'm not very tall, and I've always carried around a little bit of extra fluff is what we call it, but, I have always been like, "Oh, well, I need to fit into this, and so I'm gonna work out extra hard and eat really well," and then I'd lose, the 5 to 8 pounds that I needed to, and then I'd be fine. Pretty healthy, other than some other, like, sleeping issues that started in my 20s, which, we'll get to, but I, was just always like, it was a typical if I needed to get get in a healthy mood, then I will, and I'll do it, and or I really love sweets and I'm gonna pig out and do all that. So that's kind of been my life, and I've always been more of a, oh well, if I'm gonna help my body, I'd rather go the natural route. And a lot of that came from just being allergic to certain medications and antibiotics. Anyway, so this kind of starts when I turned 40, and then the pandemic right after that. So like I turned 40 in 2018 and I was feeling okay, but again, I wasn't sleeping the best and I knew my hormones were off. So that was kind of like my feelers were up for that. So and I was home at that time, and then I began substituting the next year for probably entire school year. My life runs in school years.
Yeah.
But yeah, by 2020, we were home for the pandemic, and it just drove me crazy, not because I'm a homebody, but also I like to get out and do things. So we were taking porch pictures, I think it was. And I was kind of annoyed by it anyway, but I was like, well, we need family pictures, but the big thing was like take porch pictures and all that. Well, I got those back and I just thought, oh man, in 2 years, I cannot believe how much different I look. And I just looked big and puffy and all those things. And I had stopped weighing myself, I believe. I think because every time I stepped on, no joke, it was at least a half a pound to a pound more. And so I was like, forget it. And I wasn't doing anything much different. So I remember what, everybody's home and can't go anywhere. So I'm like, well, I might as well start working out. And
Yeah.
so I did. I was doing this real intense, like, hit training. Not int It wasn't intense, but, like, for me, because I wasn't doing, much besides walking. And I hurt my ankle really bad. It was swollen. I thought, "Man, maybe I did something really bad." So I finally went to the doctor because I didn't usually do that either. And he and I love him because he did this, but he took one glance at my ankle and he goes, "Yeah, your ankle is gonna be fine." He goes, "You need to lose some weight." And I went, "I know." Like, I was just kinda like, "I appreciate the bluntness," and I said, "But I know," and I said, "And this is why I'm trying to by working out." So, he was just like, "Everything's gonna get better once you lose the weight," and he's always said that to me, and so I appreciate him for that. However, I sat there and I said, "Yes, I agree with you. I am really struggling losing," and it doesn't matter. I, like, hit that point where it didn't matter what I did. So, anyway, I just I can't remember what I did after that, but I just kinda went on and was like, "Oh, I know what I did. I tried phentermine for, maybe 3 days, and I was up all night, and I was even taking a half a dose, because I take a half a dose of everything, and I went back and I talked to the nurse practitioner and I said, "Does this get any better?" I said, "I'm literally up all night," and she goes, "No, it's gonna be like that," and I go, "Okay, can't do this," and so I kinda just gave up. I stopped taking it and I went on from there. So, um, somewhere along 2022, I think, I was back to teaching in a district. And anyway, I was still very just buying, kept having to buy bigger clothes for me. And I mean, I am 5'2", maybe 2.5. And so 5 pounds on me is a really big deal. I've always said 5 to 10 pounds is like astronomical for me. And people would be like, "Oh, it's not that big of a deal." I'm like, "No, it is for me. It matters a lot." So I was, let's see, sitting in, well, one thing I did, I would look in the mirror and I went, I know that I'm not even taking in enough food for what is on my body. And it seemed like um, I didn't need to be, like, my body didn't need to be holding on to the amount of fat that was on my body. It was like I could look at myself and I was like, I know this. So what am I missing here? What am I missing? Um, right after that, I can remember I I was kind of at my wit's end. I sat down, I had this prayers for just prayers for every situation. So I prayed the healthy living prayer, just kind of like, okay, like you made me, Lord, like you created me. You know what my body needs. And so shortly after that, again, I was scrolling through Instagram and I think I was pretty new to Instagram and had poo-pooed it for my kids and everything. And I saw something where you were your face, your beautiful face is up there and you're pointing to like 5 things. Is this you? And it was like can't lose the weight, can't fit into your clothes, or whatever it was, like snack, constantly snacking, wanting sugar, something like that. I don't even remember what it was. And I was like, yeah, that's me. And so again, it was like it could be this or whatever. So I clicked on it and I don't even remember from there what if I emailed you then, or I just don't remember. But anyway, I must have started listening to the podcast. And so the first thing I did was I quit snacking. And I remember that I was teaching, so it's all like muddled, but um during the day I was like, okay, I'm going to sit and I'm going to eat my lunch. I'm not going to put another thing in my mouth until I eat my dinner, which was, I did not realize how much I was snacking. So I just quit snacking. And from that, I think I lost 3 or 4 pounds. And I was like, oh, like in a couple of weeks. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is the first time like it has gone backwards on my scale. So anyway, so from then on, fasting was not a big deal for me because I was like, well, I'm okay to just eat lunch and then dinner. I've always kind of been that way, not a big breakfast eater. So I was like, I'll just do that. But I think the first time I actually reached out to you was when it was about the coffee. And I mean, I was gonna die on the cream in my coffee hill because I was like, no, no, I don't drink like just this regular creamer with all the fancy stuff in it. Although I did when I was younger, but I'm like, I buy my full fat cream with all the good stuff in it from the local farm, and that is okay for me. So I was just like, I'm gonna die on this hill. Anyway, so I tried just a little bit, and I definitely was that, like, if you try to take the cream out of my coffee, I'll like kick you in the face. I just was like, no, don't do it. It's like my one thing in the morning. So anyway, I think I DM'd you or whatever, and you said I don't drink coffee, and I thought, oh man, dang it.
This is not the right person to work with.
So it was probably, I mean, it was a whole, like, I do remember that was like towards the
That's
summertime,
so
but it
funny.
was like a whole school year. And I was like, no, I'm gonna do it. Well, my weight didn't really budge from that. And so and I think during the middle of that school year is when I did Low Insulin Academy, I believe. Yeah. So the numbers got better, but it was like there's still a lot of weight hanging on. So the Low Insulin Academy was such an eye opener. And I got to go, I didn't always make the meetings, but I got to go through each one like on my own, and just again like imprint it into my brain, like this is how you eat, like this is what you do after you eat, like, and all of these things where I'm like, oh my goodness, we are completely backwards in our society, in our nation. We are so backwards. And I do remember again, it was like that one thing I was going to hold on to, but sometime during that summer, because this is what I remember, I was in Nebraska getting my free carpet from Nebraska Furniture Mart because I'm a teacher. And I was all by myself, and I it was like this thing about like the full cream of my coffee just kept coming up, and it was like, maybe Molly, that's the thing that's like holding you back. And I thought, surely not. But it was like I was talking to myself and I was like, you know what? Fine. I said, "Fine, Lord, I'll take the cream out of my coffee. It's so good, but I'll take it out." And I kind of like justified it like, well, if I want it, then I'll eat something first and then I'll drink cream in my coffee. So that was what gave me a little bit of hope. But like waking up early in the morning, like that's the first thing I wanted. So anyway, we were on vacation, so it helped. So we were out of our normal schedule. And my husband had already done that. So he said, Molly, you can do it. And I thought, no, I can't. I can't. And I crabbed through the entire thing and crabbed and crabbed. I mean, he just heard it. But he brings me my coffee in the morning. So he's like, you can do it. Just try it. So we would be different places. And it was like, we didn't have the cream. So I was like, well, I just have to drink it like this. And it probably took about 4 days. I'll tell your listeners, like, I was that person that I was like, that will never be me. It took about well, maybe closer to 5 or 6 days to where I wasn't like, ugh, when I drank it in the morning. And now I actually really, really like it. I like it. But the good side of that is that dropped 10 pounds. Like,
Wow.
oh, yes, 10 pounds. Like,
Well, yeah, because then your body
mhm,
so you with that creamer, you're using that fat for fuel because it's like
right,
right into the bloodstream
right,
versus
right,
prolonging it a little bit, and then your body's gotta dip
right.
into fat, yeah.
Because at that time, I was probably eating 12 to 7, maybe. So a good like eating window, I was eating 2 meals, but but initially I was eating 6 in the morning to 7
Wow.
because I was drinking that cream. So I'm not kidding. Like, and I even thought like, wow, is this unhealthy? It was coming off so fast, but it was almost like the Lord was like, just do it. And I was like, okay. So from then on, I was like, I'm never going back to that. So I did do a time where I had a really short eating window, because I think my body was just like, get it off, get it off, get it off, get it off. And so 17 pounds, I think I lost total from that. And it has stayed off. Yeah. So 17 pounds on my short 5'2" body, like it has stayed off by not overexerting myself. And let's see, how do we say it? Like making it come off and then it comes back on. Like it
Yeah.
just stays off. And so I still have more to like I had, everybody has like a goal weight or whatever, but like the other amazing things that have happened, like your skin clearing, your brain clearing, all of those things like that all helps when it just like it just sheds. So it is a big eye opener to the inflammation, I feel like, that we carry around. And all the other things I've like read about or heard about with your fat holding on to, you know, the bad things in your body. It's like it hides inside that fat so that it can protect your body. So when the weight came off quickly, other things started happening. Like I I realized my gallbladder, my liver were not good at all. So I started having gallbladder attacks and I was like, oh my goodness. So that's all kind of like intermingled in there too. But of course I went to like, a lot of people were like, "Oh, you need to just get that out." And I was like, "But wait a second." Like, "But wait a second." So that's another part of my story too. So that was really, really long about how, I came in contact with you, but like it all kind of mingles from like I don't know what exactly the year was, but um, you know, just starting to listen to you and just starting to change my life and going through Low Insulin Academy. So
Thank
like
you.
I will never look at it the same ever. It's
That is
crazy.
I love this. I love your story, and
Uh-huh.
it is crazy how once you learn the proper way to eat, I mean, it seems like
Yeah,
once you've been practicing, you're like, "This is so simple." Like, what
I
was
know.
the problem before this?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
we've been taught and
right,
conditioned the exact opposite for
right, right.
so long that you
Yeah,
at this point, I don't think there's anybody who's hanging on to extra weight or who has health issues who thinks that
right,
anything can be simple. Like
right,
something, it's gotta hurt, it's gotta
right,
be like 20 supplements, it's gotta
right,
be, 5
right.
different practitioners. It
Yeah,
can't be
yes.
this
Yeah,
simple.
yeah.
Even since you went through Low Insulin Academy, I've just
Mhm.
come to like, there's so much more that
I
I'm
know.
teaching people, and I keep kind of adding
Yes,
lessons into
yes.
the academy. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's just like when you figure out, and like
yeah.
you said, it's so refreshing. Like you had gone, like every woman, lose
Right.
weight, gain it back, lose
Mhm.
weight,
Yeah,
and now it's
yeah,
17 pounds later and it's still off.
yeah.
And I can identify with you. Like if I, sorry, if you hear my dog whining
I
in the
know, mine too. They'll probably sneak in here.
Ugh. Every time I start recording a podcast, she wants to go play with the other. I should have locked her in my bedroom, but, I'm with you, like, if I gain 5
Mhm.
pounds,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
a clothing size for me.
Right. Oh,
I'm
yeah.
also taller than you, but it's just, like, how
Yes.
it distributes, it's, like, around my
Yes.
middle. It is a
Right.
clothes size for sure. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, so many things to take
Mhm.
out of that, but, we'll come back to your gallbladder issues a
Yeah.
little
Yep.
later.
I have a lot to say about that now, but yeah.
Want to make
Yeah.
sure that we touch on that because that's very common when you're losing weight.
Right.
Um, but it's very common if you're if and I wouldn't think this would be you, but if you like go on a really low fat diet too, that can be problematic. But
Right.
I want to touch on one of the biggest reasons. I mean, we've talked a lot and
Yeah.
I've followed with your family for a long time, but
Mhm. Uh-huh.
the things I want to make sure we talk about is how your husband and children have
Yeah.
adopted different lifestyles as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
Um, and your kids are in, I think your kids are in high school, if I
My 2 oldest are in high school. Mhm.
high school, so they're a little bit
Yes.
younger than mine, but we're
Yeah.
kind of in that same boat where it's like,
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
they listening to anything I say? Do they think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
cuckoo? Whatever, it's like I post some stuff on Instagram and my boys are like, "Mom, are you serious?" I'm like, "Yes, I am." And you
I'm
will
totally
come back to this in 5 years and you'll
I
think
know.
you think I'm like, I'm way out there right now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we both know as moms of teenagers that they are
Mhm.
listening and they are
Yeah.
watching, even
Right.
if they're rolling their
Right.
eyes and thinking
Right.
it's the thing ever.
Yes.
So
I get a
how
lot of eye
tell us
rolling.
about how your family just changed and,
Yes.
how they've come through this with you.
Okay. Well, of course, tried it all on my own first, and then, of course, I go right to my husband. I'm like, "Honey, you should try this." And like I said, he's always been like, "No, I'm good. Like, I don't need to get up. I don't need to go walk, and I don't need to." He's always been a food lover like me, and when the kids were little, we ate like a lot of every Friday we'd eat pizza and then ice cream, and I'm not gonna lie, like that's still there sometimes where we're like, "Oh, let's go get ice cream," but it's, anyway, since I would say probably 2022, fall 2022, his father died, and so, again, he you go through all of this, like, well, we've gotta take care of this, and then we go and, and we mourn through all of it, and then we go and take care of this, and we go take anyway, so it was all really, really busy, but then somewhere, I think, and I may have this wrong, he could correct me, but I feel like it was somewhere around the spring, maybe after that, he was like, maybe it was the summer, he's like, "I've got to just get off this weight." And so, I think he saw me doing again the no cream, and he did it first and did it quick, and and so, and he likes the milk, but all of these things he does, it's like, it comes much quicker than, when I did it. But again, I don't know the timeline, but I know he just like got up and he did do no cream in his coffee, and then he started just eating in a window, and then he started just walking. So he works from home now since the pandemic, and so he was like, well, I might as well just get up and walk after I eat. And so again, he's tried all these different things, but I was asking him today, I go, "Honey, how much weight have you lost?" And he's like, "Oh, at least 60 pounds." And I
Oh
thought,
my
like,
goodness, are you kidding?
oh, yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
because during the pandemic, he was working from home, we were all home, and it was just like we didn't go anywhere, we didn't do anything, and, again, not every night, but a lot of nights at 5, he's like, "Well, might as well have a drink." So he'd have a couple beers or a drink, and even, like, the kids were like, "Does we've never seen dad drink this much." I go, "I've never seen your dad drink this much," and it wasn't out of control, it was just like he was like, "Well, I might as well just have a
Yeah.
beer." So that was the first thing he cut out because he was like, "I don't do that." So then, yeah, so he was probably at his very worst weight, and then, yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know the numbers, but he would be able to tell you. But then his dad died, and his dad lived a life, of just he had diabetes, and then he just didn't really take care of himself. So he had heart attacks in his early 40s, had just had very ill health and everything, and so it was just a lot of taking care of him. He had married again, and then that just led to like his wife didn't taking care of him because she was pretty healthy and the things she did, but like he was still going to eat the processed foods and all the things, but then, take a shot of insulin and things like that later. So anyway,
And
once
that's
I
what dietitians tell you to do. I mean, just dose for what you're eating, so it's
right, so that insulin thing became pretty important because here we were looking at our parents who were either pre-diabetic or full on diabetic, and then we were like, we need to test our insulin, what, like fasting insulin, what's that mean? So like you were the first person to ever say anything now about fasting insulin. And I thought, no, I've had my glucose checked 1,000 times, it's under 100, whatever. But it was like, oh, when I did my fasting insulin, I think it was at I don't remember, like almost 15. And
yeah.
so which it like gosh, I think that's what it was. Anyway, which you think, okay, well, what's the big deal? But when you're like trying to get down to, below 6, like it, and so I think that was the first thing I told Brian too. And so he watched all this, and then with the walking and the timed eating, basically just eating within a window. And then I think the first thing he did, which he's much better at, he just quit eating after 7. Like he was just like, it was hard for like a day or two, but then I was like, I'm just not going to eat after 7. I don't want to be up all night with heartburn and all that stuff. And I think just from like getting up and moving, cutting out alcohol, and then and not completely, he still has a beer every once in a while, but then and not eating after 7, phew, his just like boom, like came off. So
Then you know it's insulin resistance.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then sometime, maybe it was this summer, I tested everybody's insulin. I think I told you about that fasting insulin. And his was the lowest out of everybody's. I was like, "Oh my goodness, of course." So,
Yeah.
um, which was great. I mean, like he continues to just he pretty much made that declaration like, "Okay, I know that God created my body to work a certain way. I'm not going to go down this path of, his dad lived 20, 30 more years after his few heart attacks. So it's just like he's like, I'm still not gonna go down that path because I've been worried for that long that he's gonna die. And he's like, I just don't want to do that. And we decided like we don't want to do that to our kids. Like we don't want them to worry about our health. So he just ran like his first mile, I think, this summer, like since probably high school. So he texted all of us on our family chat. He's like, "Hey, everybody just ran my first mile." So that was a big celebration. So so yeah, it's a lot of that. Like he and I both, I do want to mention, have started within the last year BHRT as well because working with we've gone to functional doctors too and done the testing, and with him it was a lot of energy. Like he was losing the weight, but man, he just did not have the energy and all that. So he did a test and it was super low. Like they were just like, you would really benefit from this. So
From
I think, yeah, I think part of that helped with the sleeping too. And
yeah.
um I had started mine like just bioidentical because I was like, I know that I don't want to do any of the other just I know too much. And so I was like, I'm gonna just go bioidentical. And I was so scared too, so scared. But I had this really great gal that I went to because, sorry, this is a total side note for a story for a different day. But I went through horrible, horrible postpartum depression after our third. And I realized I had postpartum depression probably after all three of them, but I did not know what was going on. I had started birth control in my early 20s, just like every single person my age. And I think for 10 years now, I just I've heard that they just shut down your hormones. So when I tried to start having children again, or tried to start having kids, I miscarried and I spotted through my pregnancies. And they would just be like, well, whatever. And I would be like, okay, scared through, but I was just like, well, and here I had like three beautiful babies. And then after our third, it was like, I felt like my whole body just jumped off a cliff. So anyway, kept going back to the doctor, SSRI, SSRI. So since then, like I will say, since I started birth control, I've been going like, well, I can't sleep, or like I am so anxious about XYZ or whatever. And I know I don't need to be when they're like, well, here's an SSRI, which again, not a big deal to take an SSRI. However, I was never offered anything else. And I kept saying, well, could you? And so during the postpartum, I would be like, can you please just test my hormones? And they were like, nope, you're too young, So since the time I was 35, truly, I've struggled with all kinds of hormonal issues. I now know they're hormonal. I would go to the doctor and they go, "You're a busy mom. You need this, and do you want to just up the SSRI?" And I'd be like, no, like, and in my head, I just in my
I'm not
heart,
proficient in an SSRI.
I
Like,
know I would just be like, I know there's something different. I heard, and I can't remember his name. Anyway, he said, "We don't have a Prozac deficiency." I was doing my makeup that day and I went, "Oh, I know, we don't have a Prozac deficiency." Like, that's not like the answer. So anyway, so that's a whole different story in itself. But I went to this gal sometime when I was so bad and I just was like, I'm literally up all night and then I wake up, I sleep maybe an hour or two, and I wake up and I have three children. What am I supposed to do, to and I'm certainly not feeling myself. And the regular doctor's like, "Well, you have three kids under 4," and I would be like, "Oh," anyway.
why I need to sleep.
Oh my gosh. So this was a couple years after that. Like my youngest was 2 or 3, maybe even 4, but she said, "Do you want to try this like bioidentical progesterone?" And I was so scared. I was like, "No, I can't do that. Hormones, no." And she goes, "No, trust me." She goes, "You definitely have." She was the first person to test my cortisol. I walked right in and she said, "I guarantee your cortisol is sky high." She tested all my hormones and my cortisol, and my cortisol was started at 4 in the morning sky high and was sky high till 1 a.m. or 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And so I said, I kept telling my parents, like, "Oh, I feel a little bit better like after lunch and the evening time." Anyway, and then I was flatlined on progesterone, like none. And my estrogen was just fine, but my testosterone and my progesterone were low. So that was my first indicator. When she gave me just a little bit, I was like, "Whoa, whoa!"
I
Like,
can
I feel like
sleep.
I can function again. It's so crazy. So that's a side note on BHRT. So my husband finally came around to that, just maybe not even a year ago. So it has helped him to just with sleeping and energy and all the things. So anyway, so with that, I guess I'm just talking about him, but like to go to my kids, that's been a different story. And it's different with each of them. So I guess I'll just start with my oldest though. But she has rolled her eyes and whatever. She's born real thin. She's always been real tiny. But she just this summer, and my kids love sugar. That's the thing. And that is my fault. I tell them because when they were little, I just did what like every mom at the time too. Like I thought, like, here's your snack, and I would be like, "Ooh, let's have a snack," and or here's lunch, and I would make all these things, but we didn't know anything about seed oils. We didn't know that snacking all day like just spiked their insulin all day. Um, I with my youngest, just per our lifestyle, she drank milk all day long with her. She carried it with her all day long, and she snacked all day long because like we were on the go with the other two, and so it was just her and I'd be like throwing her back a snack in the car. But like what I thought healthy snacks, like fruit snacks made with real. And I was like, "Oh, these rice snacks have to be good. Like, let me just give you this rice snack." So
Or
I
anything
really
whole grain, you're like, well, it's just it's whole grain, but it's all digesting in.
right. I was like, "Oh, I'll buy the whole grain." Yeah, I know. All the things that said it was just reading the box and what was on the front of it. Well, I never once turned the box over and I did not know what was good and what was bad. I sometimes will go through the aisles now and I'll look at the same thing I bought for my children
Oh,
and
I
I'll
do too.
I'll turn it around and I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, Lord help me through this," because I was literally feeding this to my children
I
every
know,
single
and I was
day.
eating some of it. I mean, I ate pretty well when I was pregnant, but some of it, I
Yeah,
was eating the whole grain, whatever,
I
'cause I thought
were too. Yeah.
and I was, my eating oatmeal and skyrocketing
Mhm.
my blood sugar and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I sat them down this summer and I told them that. I said, "That part is my fault, and, like, that's nothing on you," and I said, "But we have got to make changes." So, I said, "You've seen dad and I, and so now we have to do we have to start on your eating too." Of course, oh my goodness, like, they're teenagers, and my son is like, "Seriously, mom, don't take my food away from me." Like, I know that, like, I can show him how much I love him with his food, um so he's probably been the one that's most upset with me because he does like to eat all day long. But see, he lifts weights. He was running for a while. He's pretty active. And so he's constantly like, "I'm just so hungry." And I'm like, "Let's eat the right things." And he's like, "I don't want to wait to cook that meat. Like, I just want to shove food in my mouth." So So he's
I hear
probably the
you. I have 2 teenage boys, and when
yeah.
they're hungry, my goodness, they can put down enough
I
food.
don't know how people have more than one. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, oh, that's gone again. Oh, that's gone too, so
Oh,
we need to get some
yes.
more."
And then you're so right. If they're not eating
Mhm,
things that are filling them up, then
mhm.
eating more, it's like,
And
yeah.
it's so hard to get them to understand, "No, that's filled with sugar." And they're like, "No, it's not. It's a roll." And I'm like, it's filled with, like, just" so it's been a slow go, like and it kinda depends on if they are willing to listen or not. So let me go back to the summer when I sat everybody down, that part is my fault. I know so much more now. We also found out this summer that my mom had stage 3 kidney disease, which is a completely different story with that generation and like what my mom is like the hardest working person I know and like she is tough and she does not whine. And so for her to be like, well, yeah, like this is where I am, we were all like, so anyway, the rest of my family's different. We're like, no, we have got to reverse this and do these things. And so that my kids saw that also. And so they were like, okay, because they're like, well, we're worried about grandma, like, and we're like, if you guys will listen to us, this is the way that we slowly like make our bodies healthier. And so that I hate to say that it has helped, but it has just made them more aware and more willing to be like, okay, okay, mom, like, what do I do now? But the first thing I did is I said, I'm going to test everybody's fasting insulin. And so I did it. And my two teenagers who are take after my husband, they're very like tall. Well, they're not very tall. They're taller than me. And they're like a thin tall. And so they were up in the teens and they were like, oh yeah, and I was like, no, like, do you know that this number should not be over 6? And they were like, oh, and then they were like, so what do we do? And I was like, well, this, and then they just did not want to listen. So like it's I want to say too, like you run into these roadblocks. Like you're like, yes, this is good, it's good. And then you like run into a roadblock because you can't control another person, even if it's your child anymore. And of course, the older they get, like I can't control anything. So, and you said it before, like, and they'll be off somewhere and you'll find the wrappers and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe my child just ingested all of this, even though we know like what it is. So I always attribute it to smoking because I used to smoke when I was young and someone would be like, well, do you know that that causes? And I'd be like, yeah, but it's
Yeah,
fine. I'm gonna smoke anyway. Like, so
I'll
you can,
care right now.
and so
I'll
that's
care later in 30 or 40 years.
I know, and so, like, that is what sugar is, and so we've talked a lot about, like, oh, yeah, when you're addicted to nicotine, like, you're just gonna do it anyway. Like, when you're addicted to sugar, you're just going to eat it anyway, so it's not like I've seen I've seen little changes, but it's not like they have totally jumped on and changed their whole lives. Like, that for sure is not something, I have seen yet, although I'm very hopeful. I mean, um my youngest too is a different well, I'll go with my oldest. Like I said, was really thin and like she's just a bird eater. She's always been that way. So she's gonna eat something. She'll eat like 3 bites of a roll and a cheese stick. And I'm like, okay, honey, like we gotta eat a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
I do know what back to the throes of postpartum depression, like I was so anxious I couldn't eat. That was the only way I ever lost weight. Now, again, my cortisol was sky high. I was all screwed up on the inside, but like I was real thin. Like I by the time I had gone to the functional doctor, I was 109 pounds. And then I was also crying because I was like, I know I'm too thin. I know I'm too thin. I got to get a little bit on me. And my dad came over. My dad has been studying this for a very long time. And I'll think of the book in a minute that he originally was like, you have to read this. And it probably won't come to me until later tonight. But uh,
Right.
he goes, "Don't worry about your cholesterol. Don't worry about your cholesterol." And I was like, "What do you mean, don't worry about my cholesterol? Everybody says it." And he goes, "You have got to get some fat on you because he's like, your body is not going to work right until you eat fat." So he would literally, like, my mom was teaching, so she'd be gone all day, and I was home with the kids. My dad has always been self employed. So he would come over and literally make me eggs with a ton of cheese. And like, he'd be like, "Do you want me to make you some hamburger?" And I would be like, oh, like I couldn't even get it. I was like, no, it's too much. But he would be like, just eat, just eat. And man, was he right because slowly it got better after I got that like good fat in. So
Yes, and
I,
you can. cholesterol and hormones.
I
Like,
know, and so, like, fast forward to my daughter as she's growing and going through puberty, and she just does not eat anything good, just what I would call fluffy carbs, and so but she's like, "Oh," always craving sugar. So this summer, she was still having trouble just with her mood and sleeping and all of that. So we went to, again, a functional, practitioner, and she looked at my daughter and said, I just feel like you're really deficient in a lot of things." And I think coming from someone else,
yeah,
like, that was very.
and to see it on paper is
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. So she had her just, take a multivitamin, and she's like, "Eat some more protein." And Shanna, I have been saying this for 2 or 3 years. "I need you to eat about 100 grams of protein every day, sis." And so the nurse practitioner is like, "I really need you to eat protein." Well, she works at a steakhouse, so she'll bring home a steak and eat, like, the steak at the kitchen table, and then she'll eat a little bit of her cake, is what but we're just like, "Wow." And so where she too had been begging me, like, "Do I get on some medicine? Like, I'm just so up and down all the time, Mom. My brain is everywhere." And so going to the nurse practitioner, I was like, "This is kind of our last shot." So I prayed. I'm like, will she listen to the scout? And she did. So she's doing so much better. And I
Yeah,
think there
with
is
your
just
blood
strength.
sugar going up and down all
Yes.
day.
Yes, from just eating the protein and eating it, and I'm always like, "Eat the protein first, everybody. Eat your protein first, eat your protein first," so they're
Yeah,
like, "I know, Mom." I'm like, "Even if it's just a bite or 2." So,
that's
so that's kinda her story, and she has said, "I just feel so much better. What is it?" And in my head, I'm thinking of all the things that it is.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so
it is. It's so hard because 'cause they're not taught how their body works,
no.
and they're not seeing any outward so, like, my 3
Right.
kids, the older 2 have both had some health issues, and
Yeah.
they've struggled with acne. Um,
Right.
middle son who had major health issues for, like,
Right.
years has been doing
Yes,
very
I remember that.
well
Yeah.
for years, but my
Yeah.
youngest, he's my crappiest eater.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
his blood sugar is just bleh half the
Yeah.
but he
Yeah.
doesn't have any like, he's got clear skin, he's not over I mean, he's thin, he's
Yeah.
muscular, I'm like so he
Yeah.
doesn't see any like, it's like when you don't have the issues, he's just like,
Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
it's even more difficult, and, but,
Yeah.
like, as we were talking before we started recording, they're listening
Mhm.
and they're
Right.
watching,
Right.
and they'll have the tools later in
Yes.
they're not
Yeah.
applying it all now, and it is
Yes.
overwhelming when they're the only one who,
Right. Yeah.
isn't eating fast food or
I
isn't
know. I know. And it's so as a mom, it's so hard because like I said, you teach them all these things and they go, "Okay, okay." And then they may do it for like a few days. And then they're back to like and I teach at their school with them too. So I'm like, we'll be having a huge party and I'm like, "Oh, I see you over there shoving the cake in your face." But in my head I'm thinking, "Should I just ask them if they ate some protein before they ate?"
I'm gonna give you some protein
Anyway, or
before
like,
you have
"What
yeah.
else have you eaten today? Like, is it okay to eat that?"
No.
Anyway, and
I
my
know,
youngest.
and you don't but it is, they'll
Yeah,
know, like,
yeah.
they
Well, another small improvement, like with my youngest, and with that, like I said, she has been the one that she's just my extroverted, like she wants to be around, wants to party, all these things, and then she like I said has always been the one to just be out there and be in things and to not and she's just like, "No, no, no, I'm good, Mom, I'm good." Well, she was having like horrible headaches. So along this time that I tested everybody's fasting insulin, like hers was higher than the other two. And she just broke down. And I said, "Here's the thing, don't break down because this is or I said, I understand that you're upset about it, but I go, this is our chance to go, okay, now what am I going to do
we
about it?"
know, yeah, we
Because she was having yeah, she was like, "Oh, Mom," she's going through puberty. I mean, she just literally is. You can see it, and all the issues she has. I'll be like, "Okay, well, let's address this. Let's figure it out." But was having horrible headaches, and I did say to her, "I think you're probably a little bit more like me. You have a hard time detoxing." And she's like, "I don't know what that means, Mom." But I'm like, everything you put in, I'm like, I don't think it comes out like the way that it needs to. So I was like, what I did start giving her a little bit of berberine too because she was having headaches. And I said, "I think the headaches are just from dehydration." And anyway, and so it was kind of like she didn't believe me, but like she would go to the nurse and I'd get the report through email. She was going at least 3 to 4 times a week to the nurse to get ibuprofen for a headache.
Oh,
And I
wow.
was like, "Man, like, this cannot be good." And so, once we did the fasting insulin and I started giving her berberine along with just a multivitamin every day, which again is like a whole, like, issue in itself trying to give your kids supplements, but, she and then anytime she'd have some kind of, like, infection or something, I'd give her oregano oil, so, um, I gave her, a liver detox supplement for, like, a couple weeks too, so just to get everything, like, moving and kinda sloughing off. Well, I'll tell you, since we've done, even just the berberine, she has not had the headaches like she has. And even with her too, she said, "Well, mom, I'm gonna fast like you do." And I was like, "Well, you need to know how to do this the correct way." But she goes, "I'm not hungry till noon either." And I said, "That's okay." I said, "But just make sure that you're not eating also at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night, or you're not eating throughout the day." I told her the same things as me. I go, "Two things you can do is you can stop snacking because she'll snack all day long. She's like me. And I said, you can just eat within this time period and this time period. And that's it. And so she has felt a ton better just from doing that too. So,
Yeah, and a lot
um,
of headaches are triggered from blood sugar crashes, like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
crashing or dips below the
Yeah.
definitely can be a headache, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyway,
So
there's
that's your family and how I mean,
so,
really,
yeah.
like I said, I love just getting the updates from you and seeing
Yeah.
how he's doing.
Yeah.
Uh, so what are you still well, let's go here. Let's go back to the gallbladder thing because I said
Yeah. Yeah. That's
oh,
interesting.
just because, like I said, I've had a lot of people have
Mhm.
gallbladder issues,
Mhm.
and I don't like to put people on like cleanses per se.
Right.
I do, and or like a liver cleanse,
Right.
like,
Right.
but I do want to just hear like your story and how you
Yeah.
struggle with that because you can get some, gallstones or
Right.
irritated gallbladder when you do
Right.
a pretty substantial amount of weight loss in a short period of time,
Yes.
or if you've gone from low fat, like being afraid to eat fat and all of a
Yes.
sudden eating more fat because you're
Yes.
asking your gallbladder to
Right.
secrete bile that has been sitting there for a really long time and it
Right.
can be sludgy and get rotten onions
Right.
and everything. So yeah, what was your experience with that?
Well, and that's exactly what I could just keep saying right, because that's exactly what I was doing. I grew up same time as you, like in this low fat, low fat, low fat. Um, and then of course I'd have my dad over here saying, eat fat, eat fat, eat
Yeah.
fat. And I'd be like, no, I can't. And I would say too, sometimes I'd be like, I'll eat too much fat and my stomach will hurt so bad. And
Yeah.
so, but just recently, well, I'll back up a little bit because I had a gallbladder attack when I was pregnant with my first. Um, because as soon as I got like I had lost a lot of weight and was pretty healthy. Um, and when I got pregnant with her, and so then I started growing. I was like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna eat whatever I wanted to because food tasted so good. And I do remember exactly where we were. We were out and we ate some kind of I remember for some reason, probably because I had to think about what I ate. I had eaten fettuccine alfredo. And so, and I was 15 weeks pregnant with her. So also my hormones were like, they were jazzing up like at that time. And so, and finally we went into the doctor and they were like, well, we don't really know what it is because they tested for appendicitis and of course looked at her and she was fine and everything. And so they had just given me the pain medicine that I was able to take while pregnant. And they kept me overnight for monitoring, and they kind of came in and were like, "We think you had a gallbladder attack." And I was like, "Okay." Like, I felt like someone had beat me up, like I had done sit-ups all night long and without stopping. That's just what it felt like. And so I hadn't ever like experienced that until the last couple of years when I was like, "Man, like every time I eat something full of fat because I was fasting, I was eating more fat. I was eating it like first with my if I had a salad or whatever. So, and then if I had something like dessert wise, I'd eat like these peanut butter bars with a lot of fat in them. Well, so the other thing is, here was my rationale, Shanna, and I now know it was not the good thing because I was like, well, I know I don't want to eat the sugar, so I'm going to eat the fat with a teeny bit of like fake sugar or whatever they put in, erythritol or whatever however they
Yeah.
say that. And I'm going to skip a fruit. Like, so for almost an entire year, I did not eat fruit. And I'm not a huge vegetable eater anyway, but I would be like, "Huh, I just really, I like fruit, but I'm going to eat this instead for my sugar or my like little dessert." And I now know that's what happened the first one I had because I was losing the weight really, not really fast, probably about a pound a week, which is what was happening. And then, gosh, I'm trying to think of, I've had three in the past like 2 years.
Okay.
So, and then, like I said, my only other one was when I was pregnant, so 18 years ago. And so I'm like, what's the deal? Why does this happen? Well, again, going back to my family that I came from, my dad had his out, and then my older sister did also. So my older sister's was more like she's who I go to for everything. She's only 2 years older than me. I'm like, okay, are you dealing with this now? And she is very very knowledgeable. Has completely jumped over to the we can heal from the inside out. Like she's just like jumped on that bandwagon. So and she's very very intelligent, so she researches like crazy. And I said anyway, I said, okay, you had yours out, like why did you have yours out? And she goes, well, I was just and she's very tiny, mind you, she's very fit, very tiny, and so not overweight at all. She was like, but every time I ate, and this was years ago, she was like, I would have a really bad stomach ache. So she's kind of in the medical field, she's in pharmaceuticals, so she was like, she went to the doctor and she's like, well, and they were like, well, you need to do a I can't remember what test it's called, where they inject dye or they inject something to see how well it's functioning, a function test. And so hers wasn't functioning very well, so she was like, take it out, because that's just where she was at that time. Because she's like, and because they were like, you should probably get taken out, so she's like, well, let's do it. It was very
Yeah.
not, very easy. So when I called her when I was having mine, I said, gosh, I'm having this issue now. What should I do? She goes, Molly, and she was very serious. She goes, I wish I would have done a cleanse and done more to research about how I could get my gallbladder before I just took it out. And
Mhm.
she said that, and I was like, okay. But now everyone around us is like, now hold on, because dad has also had his out. But
Yeah.
again, my dad, who's very like researched and knowledgeable about this stuff, but man, he loves to eat. And so when he was having his really bad gallbladder attack, he we were down at my sister's in Kentucky, and I was having a vertigo episode, which again is vertigo is something I deal with and has gotten better with the way I eat. But I was having vertigo, he was having a gallbladder attack, and we were like, "What's going on?" And everybody was kind of making fun of us, but like he would every time he ate, he's like, "I just feel awful every time I eat." So finally, by the time that we got back to the city, my mom took him to the doctor, and right away he was sent to the hospital with emergency like a gallbladder removal, and he was septic. So yeah. So again, I don't know the timeline of events exactly what happened, but like he was in the hospital for a week because of gallbladder issues and septic. So again, there was that like, well, you don't want it to get too bad, like in our family thing. So anyway, but talking with my older sister, and we kind of like sneakily were like, we're gonna do something different. We're always like that. We're like, we're not gonna follow the mainstream. So she's like, I really just wish I would have done a cleanse. So research, research, research. And I thought, man, I don't know if I could do that whole last day cleanse with the citrus and the oil thing. I was like, I don't know if I could do that. Again, I was also like, what if I have gallstones? And I don't want one to get stuck on the flush day and all that stuff. So I have never gone to that last final day with the citrus and the flush day they call it. I did have an ultrasound after one of them, and they said there were no gallstones. And so I was like, okay, I guess I could do it. I did have a little cyst on my liver then, which like really worried me, but they're like, well, it's benign, it's really normal. But I was like, man, so I just did this huge deep dive into liver gallbladder care. And so basically what I've done since dropping the weight, I've had like I've had like three of them, but I have the second one I've had, I realized I was just not eating the fiber. I wasn't eating the fruit, I wasn't eating the fiber, and I wasn't getting it like moving through. And
Yeah.
so I now my whole goal is to continually like get my body like the best nutrients it can, and then eat so much, not so much fiber, but enough fiber to just move all of that through, all of the fat and all the protein through. And then and to make sure I'm going to the bathroom every day. It's so silly, but I'm always like, "Well, are you?" People are having issues. I'm like, "Well, you going to the bathroom every day?" And they're like, "Whoa, wow, I'm not going to tell you that." I'm like, "Well, I mean, it's just like you need to, and
Uh,
maybe even go a couple times a day. Like it's really, really healthy for you." And so I think it was, yeah, actually it was this last one I had, the last gallbladder attack I had. I was like, I am not eating enough fruits and vegetables. So, I was at my brother's house in Michigan and he was like, "I'm gonna call the hospital." And I was like, "No, no, no, do not call the hospital. I'm not going to the hospital," because this last one was comparable to, um, I hate to say it, but like comparable to childbirth. It was so painful. I knew it was spasming. I knew I could feel exactly where it was. I was laying on the floor in a position to like make it feel a little bit better, but everyone was there except my older sister. And I go, just call her. I said, call her right now and ask her what I need to do right this minute to get the spasms to stop. And so she said, they were on the phone. She said, well, get her some apple cider vinegar. So they did. And I was sipping that. Well, couldn't get it down fast enough. It was just like a sip. And so, and it helped. But then she goes, well, if she can't get it down, go get her some organic apple juice. And the kids went to the store, got me organic apple juice. And I sucked that apple juice down so fast and the spasms stopped,
wow.
like stopped. So that was my other indication, Shanna, that like that malic acid, along with liver care, like
Mhm.
milk thistle, dandelion. There's one other, and I can't think of what it is, but you can get liver cleanses everywhere. Like so, about every couple months now, I just do the supplements with malic acid, and man, it like cleans you out. But it's like it's such, and then make sure that I eat my apples every day, and I eat my fruit and my vegetables because I'm like I will easily pass up fruit and vegetables for like a sweet treat that's really not even like real sweetness, just like but I'm like, I needed to like get myself back on
Yeah.
what's the word? Like desiring that like fruit
Yeah.
after a meal. So
Yeah,
that is
and
what really been it. Mhm.
yeah, and bitters can help with that digestion process too, and with the
Yeah, is that digestive enzymes? Because digestive enzymes
digestive
are
enzymes and bitters are a little bit different.
oh, okay.
Bitters will
Okay.
help with the stomach acid production so that you digest
Okay.
protein and fat better, well,
Okay.
mostly protein. The digestive enzymes are almost like little scissors that can help with the digesting all of the macronutrients. So sometimes
Okay.
when
Okay.
I'm working with clients, their whole digestive process, their issues are like
Mhm.
stomach acid and not having
Yes.
enough digestive enzymes, and then they just
Right.
feed downstream. It's
Yes. Yeah.
sugar, and it's all starting up, like, just not
Right.
digesting their food very well. They're eating really great, but they're
Yeah.
not digesting
I
food.
know, I know. And that's kinda what when I was like it's like this, like, I'm losing weight and I feel great, my skin's great and all this stuff. I'm like, but then, like like a gallbladder attack, and then I'm like,
Yeah,
"What
yeah.
was that all about?" You know?
Well, and it's just supposed to show, like, we're always changing and
Mhm. Yeah,
evolving, like, our
yeah,
body's changing as we age. We are figuring things out. Maybe we get some
yes,
testing back that shows us some things like, "Oh my gosh, I never knew,
yeah,
like, that was my issue."
yes.
And just as we grow and change, like,
Mhm.
I've changed my whole fasting regimen, as you know, in the last,
Yes, yes, yeah,
and I just, like, it's working for me, like,
right,
but
right,
I don't know, like, I don't wanna
yeah,
say, like, the perfect protocol for me for the rest
right,
of my life, like, I don't
yeah.
know. So we just have to be willing to learn and change and grow if
Well,
we
and that's where, like, I love the conversation about it, just because when something like you come to a stopping point or something doesn't work again, like it's working and you're like, now what? And it's so nice to be able to come into a community and be like, well, what did you try? And what did you try? And, like, no longer do I just want to be like, well, I'm going to go to the doctor and see if they can help me with this again. And again,
I wish
nothing
we could.
right, and nothing against the doctor, but like, I anymore, I have to be like, well, I have to go somewhere where somebody's gonna be like, let's go back and figure out, have you been doing this and this and this?" And, like, I'm again, not that medicine isn't helpful, but I'm like, our bodies are so amazing, and I truly believe, like, our bodies are trying to help us heal all the time, and when you, like, develop that mindset, you're like, "Okay, like, things are different now."
And it's so hard sometimes
Mhm.
to not think like your body's turning against
Yeah,
you. You have so many health issues, you
I
feel
know.
happy, it's like, ugh.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah,
I honestly don't really buy into the whole autoimmune theory that your body's attacking itself. Like, I think
right.
that some
right,
respects, like if something's put into it, it's doing
right,
that defense, but
right,
like your body's attacking its own cells, I'm like, I don't know.
right.
It
Yes.
doesn't make
Well,
sense to me.
and I mean, they told me that with vinegar once. I went and had these tests done, and they're like, "Well, you're really sensitive to dust and pet dander and vinegar." And I was like, "I eat vinegar on
Yeah,
everything."
yeah, yeah.
And so, but really, and I remember when I think you, was it Lisa or Risa Grow, maybe?
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay, I
I
have, like, all these notes. It's so funny, you should see my
yeah.
notes. I'm like, "Number 1, do this. Number 2, do this. Number 3," and it's from I think it was last spring where I was like, We're gonna do all these things," and it was from several, different, podcasts I was listening to, but one where she, like, said a whole bunch of things, I was like, oh my word, like, that is what has been going on, and what I think is going on is that my liver's gunked up, like, my liver, everything that detoxes my body is not detoxing. And
Yeah,
so I was like, how do I do that? And so um with anything I put into it, and that's why I thought like, how can vinegar be bad for me? And
yeah.
like I just am supposed to take it out completely. Um, Maybe it's not the vinegar, maybe it's my detox system, if
Mhm.
that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
maybe
And
that's
you
not
think
working.
it's alkaline and
Yes.
now it's not being excreted
Yeah.
as
And
good.
that's what we've been trying to, like, explain to my mom again, because, like, my mom is, like, I said, she is the toughest woman I know, with the sweetest side ever, and she literally will drop anything and go and help whoever needs help at that time,
Mhm.
but at the expense of her health, and she has done that, and so we have been telling her, like, "Mom, your liver is, like, your first, detoxing big detoxing system," and we're like, "The kidneys come right after that, so, like, you can reverse it, but you have got to do some things that like to get both of those in order to get all of the toxins leaving the way that they need to and
Mhm.
so that has been something that my older sister and I have researched a lot, and my other siblings too. I'm not saying that they haven't, but like they're like in a different phase of life. They've got little kids right now, so it's my older sister and I are like, we're gonna get at this. We researched all these different treatments and everything, and of course mom started walking and swimming and intermittent fasting, and she's lost like almost 20 pounds. Like it is amazing, but like she was having trouble with her joints, and she does feel better. Like I'm not saying that she is you know out of the woods or anything, but she feels so much better, and we're like, you can go mom this way or you can go like this way. And so when my sister and I were researching, we were like, insulin and inflammation and toxins are those are like these big things. Like you have got to pay attention to them. Insulin, inflammation, toxins. I
Yes.
mean, we're just like over and over again, like these things, and like get this crud out of your body. So, because she'd be like, oh, I'm dealing with this. And she's not a whiner. She wouldn't want to tell anybody about it. So she'd just go to the doctor and she'd be like, just give me the pill to help take care of it or whatever.
Yeah.
But at one point we called her and we said, can you get off this medication and this? Because your body's having to break those down and detox them. So as
Yeah,
much of that you can get out,
can
it's
be
gonna help.
on them. Well,
Yeah.
as we close out, we're recording this in very early January, so
Yeah.
we're a
There's
little bit
snow
late.
coming and there's no sun.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, but we've also just turned the calendar year, and
Right,
I'm
right.
a huge person to set resolutions because I
Yeah.
just try to live my best
Yes.
life and
Yeah.
learn. For me, it's learning. Like I am
Right.
wanting to learn
Mhm.
things, try them out on myself, try them on my
Yes.
family.
I'm that same way. I know, I'm that same way. I'm like, "What next?"
Well, what is still a work in progress for you that in 2025, you're like, okay, you've come so far, Molly, in the last couple of
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
things and pass it on to your husband and your children and
Yeah.
your mom and your sister
Yeah.
collaborate with you. So that's
Yeah.
amazing. But what are some things that you feel like, okay, we're still a work in progress, which is
Yeah.
great. Okay, like
Yes.
what's our
Oh,
progress?
yeah, I definitely have those. For me personally, the first thing I would say is, my muscle mass. Like, I've never been a huge, like, worker out or like you talk about when you would work out, and I would be like, "Mm, no, I'm good." And it just, like, it takes a lot for me to, like, get up and do something. So but what I found is that when I do that with my husband or we just get part of it, I have to make it part of my routine where I'm not thinking about it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
walking is like that for me. Like now we're just like, oh, sun's out, let's just go walk. We'll go walk for 10 minutes. Or like, my teaching partner and I, like, we eat lunch and then we'll be outside at recess right after that. And we're like, well, let's just walk around. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But anyway, so those things are just normal built in the day. And so I would have to say that like lifting heavy things is not built in my day. And
Yeah.
so and I'll be like, now I've got, like this big teenager around. I'll be like, buddy, will you please like go and put this? And I'll be like, no, Molly, you do it yourself. You lift that heavy thing up there because it's just never been in me to lift. And so that is something I'm like, how do I build this into my day to where it's just a no-brainer? So one small tiny little thing I just started doing in the last week, like I'll be curling my hair because I curl it almost every morning. And I'll just do squats and
Yeah.
like calf raises and stuff like that, like while I'm curling my hair. Cause it takes a good 10 minutes. I'm like, I'm just gonna do it like while I do my hair. So I just that is one thing I definitely need to like put in more because mom and I were going to Pilates, but then again, to like get to an actual class sometimes and then to like not lose your spot and like get there on time and all this stuff, like
I
that
know.
was becoming like a stress for us. And not for her, but it was really more for me. I was like, this is becoming more of a stress than it is help. But Pilates was so good for all of that, and that toning. So that was like probably the first thing I thought about. Like this year, I'm going to work on that. We The second thing would probably be just balancing my life with just all the other things I'm doing. It's like I usually have all of these things going in my brain, like and so I'm like, what can I focus on, to make sure that's all balanced. So I did a silly little thing that I didn't ever think I would do, but I just made on a Google Docs, like I put pictures of the things that like the 5 or 6 things I want to focus on. And it was like my home and what do I want to do with my home and the garden and just health and stuff like that. So that kind of just gave me like a clear view of I'm going to spend, the majority of my time as a wife and a mom doing this. And then I have a profession and I'm going to spend this amount of time to, just kind of like putting that out in my head just to be able to balance everything and and not feel overwhelmed by one thing or the other. And so anyway, and then the third thing is that I'm really excited because I found a practitioner close to us that and it's not covered by it's no insurance pay, I guess is what it is. So it's like a kind of like a monthly pay after your initial fee. But I not signed up, but I made the girls and I both a an appointment because I just am like, I want to get the girls into this pattern of like what is the best way to take care of my body as I'm growing and coming into growing up and getting married and having children, having my own family. I'm like, I didn't feel like I did that the right way, obviously. So I'm like, I want to help teach them that. And so we all go within the next couple of weeks. And so I'm really excited about this. And I was looking on the website, Shanna, I was like, oh, she would be so happy because like she does 3 tests and she does oh no, I'm forgetting the third, but she does a fasting insulin test and she does a CRP test, I think. Homocysteine, is that correct? Is that or
Yeah.
am I there's 2 different ones. I can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, and then there's one other, like those are right away your first appointment, you do those 3 and I thought,
Yes.
let's
I'm here. Oh,
so those
yeah.
are kind of like the 3 things that are the biggest. And then of course, Brian and just he and I just keeping on track. Like we're so together now, I feel like where we're like, well, we're gonna buy these groceries or we're going to go on a walk after we eat, or we're like, we're gonna do this instead of that or whatever. So it
Yeah.
helps so much when your spouse is like, yeah, let's do this together. Because I think so many things I wouldn't do if he wasn't always doing them with me, or they'd be harder. They'd be
Yeah.
harder.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I
Yeah.
know I laugh when you say, like, now you have a big, strong like, a strong boy in your house, like, both
Yeah.
my boys are, like, 6'2",
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
do,
"Can you do this?"
"Can you
Yeah.
lift this down for me? Can you do" and then, "Mom, you always say how strong you are, like, you always come to strength training." Like, I have the
Yeah.
opposite problem, like, "Oh, I guess you're right." Like,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, it's nice for me, like, to have their height around.
I know. I know. Yeah. Yeah. Because 'cause they're taller.
Love
Yeah.
having all these tall people around that can,
I
like,
know.
but well, thanks so much for coming on today and sharing your story.
Absolutely.
Just
It's
wonderful.
been fun. Yes.
wonderful to hear how, like I was saying at the beginning,
Yeah.
like somebody has just like kept with it and implemented things little by
Right.
little
Right.
and keeps going with it because
Yeah.
we're so, as we've been talking, the body is so
Mhm.
innately smart and intelligent.
Yes.
We just have to treat
Yes.
it how it's meant to be
Right.
treated and
Right.
ourselves how we're and live the life and all the things.
Yes.
You really
Yes.
learned well and done
Yeah.
such a fabulous job with teaching your children. And yeah, we're never going to be perfect.
Mhm.
There's hardships with I was kind of in the same
Yeah.
line as you as
Yeah.
teaching these cups to my kids a lot later on.
Right.
Where it's
Right. You're like,
it's
"Oh, okay."
easier if I knew this when they were like babies and toddlers.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
hey, we're doing what we can
Yeah.
and
When they notice a small change too, that's, like, such a big win because 'cause you're like, "Okay, now they
yeah.
notice it, so or they
Right,
feel better."
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you're definitely changing the lives of your family and those around you,
I
and
hope so.
and
Yeah.
inspiration for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
so that is very important. So thanks for coming on today and sharing your story.
Thank you, Shanna.